So we have May 2023, question 1. The first question says we should calculate the return on capital employed. So to calculate return on capital employed, ROCE, return on capital employed, ROCE, is operating profit divided by capital employed multiplied by 100. That's the formula for ROCE. And for capital employed, it is non-current liabilities plus total equity. That's the formula. Then let's go back to the question. I think I did it already. Let me see. Okay, I did it here. So this is the question already. So this is the question. The capital employed for 2022 is this plus this, then divided by this divided by this. That's how we got our 4.78. That's the capital employed. Operating profit divided by capital employed. Capital employed is non-current liabilities plus total equity. And non-current liabilities plus total equity gives us 71.11. Then you divide it by this, gives us 4.78. So that's how to calculate capital employed. So go back to question 1B. So for question 1B, here it said construct a supply and demand diagram, okay, to show the likely impact on the market for consumer goods from an increase in the cost of raw materials. An increase in the cost of raw materials brings about an increase in the cost of production. And we need to find the equilibrium first. We have the equilibrium at this point. So this is equilibrium. We have demand and supply. We have equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. An increase in the cost of production will shift the supply curve leftward from S to S1. And that will bring about a new quantity. Quantity will contract from QE to Q1. And that's going to bring about a rise in equilibrium price from PE to P1. Contraction here, leftward shift, and increase in price. That's what an increase in the cost of production will bring about. That's 1B. We go to 1C. So for question 1C, they said, I think this one is clear, right? For question 1C, they said Bosch announced that 950 million will be invested in an engineering and manufacturing factory in China. Discuss if this expansion program is likely to result in internal economies of scale. First, I define the economies of scale. The economies of scale is a cost advantage firms like Bosch will enjoy due to expansion. That is economies of scale. And for internal economies of scale, it occurs because the firm is expanding using its own resources internally. That's internal economies of scale. Examples of internal economies of scale are technical economies of scale, managerial economies of scale, financial economies of scale, marketing economies of scale, risk-bearing economies of scale. Try to mention all these things because when you mention them, it allows you to develop points for each one. Do you get it?
Yeah.
So when you have economies of scale question, first try to mention the internal economies of scale, then make a point from each internal economies of scale. So I mentioned the internal economies of scale. Now I said Bosch intends to open a new manufacturing factory in China to increase its supply of parts and systems for the electrical market. That is expansion. This will allow Bosch to gain purchasing economies of scale, as it will be able to order large quantities of raw materials at a discount. That is purchasing economies of scale. However, the new factory may have a higher running cost and therefore may not be able to exploit economies of scale as anticipated. Does it make sense there? That is for purchasing economies of scale. And that's the point anyway, because just 6 marks, right? 8 marks. Now go to question 1D. Are you there? For question 1D, they said, yeah, for question 1, it's about SWOT analysis. They said, let me read the question here. They said, assess the likely benefit for Bosch for Bosch using SWOT analysis when developing its business strategy. SWOT analysis involves the use of internal strengths and weaknesses of the business, the external opportunities and the threats that a firm could face. That is what SWOT analysis is. The strengths, the weakness, the opportunity, and the threat. So here I wrote strength. Strength applies to the competitive advantage of a business. Strength is what? The competitive advantage a business has. That is strength. A business strength of Bosch is its innovation, which allows it to make advances in the manufacturing and technology market. This may create a competitive advantage. Now, the opportunities. Opportunities are the favorable external factors that a business can take to its own advantage to generate revenue and profit. The opportunity are those that comes externally that would allow you to generate more revenue and profits. It's an opportunity. The growth of electric car market gives an opportunity to Bosch to use its experienced employees and its leading position to increase profit from this growth. However, SWOT analysis may have its limits when it comes to planning as Bosch doesn't have control on certain external influences, such as material prices, supply chain because it needs raw materials, yes or no? So which may impact on the success of the business. The success of your business does not end with SWOT. There are some external influences, like supply chain, like the cost of raw materials. You don't have power over them. So this might also affect your success. Do you get the point here? Also, the opportunity to generate more revenue in the growing market for electric car is there, but Bosch may not have the financial capability to explore it. Remember Bosch is a private limited company, right? So that simply means the amount of capital available to Bosch is not the same as that will be available to a public limited company. So the opportunity to grow is there, but Bosch might not have the financial capability to grow, which means Bosch might not be able to exploit economies of scale. Does it make sense there? A SWOT analysis is useful to provide an overview of a business, but it needs to be combined with other research tools such as PESTLE, political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and local or legal factors. These are also need to be put into consideration. Is it clear? Is it clear, please?
Yeah.
Any question about that? Any question?
No.
So go to question E. They said, so for question E is about private limited company. They said, what's the benefit? Let me just read. Assess the possible impact of remaining a private limited company for Bosch. Private limited company is a company that the shares are sold within friends and family. That makes it a private limited company. Shareholders of Bosch include family and charitable foundation. This is an indication that the control of the business cannot be lost to outsiders. Please take note of this point and make it. Shareholders of Bosch include family and charitable foundation. This is an indication that the control of the business cannot be lost to outsiders, the first point. The charitable foundation does not have a voting right. You said that already, which means that the Bosch family can make decisions regarding the investment in the growth of the business. This may not be possible if Bosch were to be a public limited company. You are comparing now. Most of the profits of Bosch are reinvested into the business. This may be difficult if it were to be a PLC, as dividends have to be paid to shareholders. Do you understand that? Yeah. However, being a private limited company reduces the amount of capital available to Bosch. Yes or no? Financial institutions may be willing to give loans to PLCs than private limited companies, which limits the source of finance available to Bosch. Outside investment in Bosch might bring about higher output, which may in turn reduce the average cost of production, economies of scale. So being a public limited company has its own opportunities too, its own benefits too. I think it's clear. Any question about that? So go to question 2. So for question two, okay, it's about corporate social responsibility. Your definition was not right. Corporate social responsibility implies that a business ensures that its activity considers the interests of the stakeholders. That makes it corporate social responsibility. So whatever we do, we put into consideration stakeholders. That is corporate social responsibility. Wells Fargo donates large amounts of money to charitable causes, such as housing projects, according to the extract. This may in turn improve the reputation of the bank, which may lead to more customers depositing their money into the bank. You said that. People are conscious about the environment nowadays. Yes or no? And the fact that Wells Fargo received awards for its environmental impact. This may attract potential customers and retain existing customers, even existing loyal customers. Let's say existing loyal customers. Yes or no?
We're making the same points.
Yeah, but how are you constructing the point? Since Wells Fargo is acting in a sustainable way to use renewable energy and increase efficiencies, this will bring about long-term benefits to the bank in terms of cost saving, leading to improvement in profitability and lower banking fees to customers. You didn't say that. There's cost efficiency in the long run.
Yeah.
So cost efficiency will bring about lower price. Yeah, it's the bank. Bank also charge. They charge. My bank will charge me on maintenance allowance or maintenance fee. So which simply means because my bank is making enough profit, it will charge me less.
Yeah.
So not a business, a bank is also a business. So what you have to do is those prices you relate it to fees. That's the difference. Do you get the point I'm making here?
Okay.
However, corporate social responsibility is expensive to implement, especially in the short term. So it increases cost of production in the short term.
I think I didn't talk about it.
You didn't talk about that. Please. Corporate social responsibility is important. It is beneficial in the long term. So whenever you want to talk about setback, about corporate social responsibility, you refer it to the short term. That is what I did here. I said corporate social responsibility is expensive to implement, leading to increased cost of production in the short term. Wells Fargo donates 1.5% of its revenue each year to charitable causes. This may not go well with shareholders who seek to maximize profit to increase dividends. When you donate 1.5% of your revenue to charitable cause, it reduces your profit because profit is total revenue minus total cost.
Yeah.
So which simply means the profit the share of profit to the shareholders in form of dividends would reduce. Shareholders might not be happy with that. They might be dissatisfied. The impact of the program depends on whether bank customers care about sustainability or even aware of such program. Customers might not even know about such program, which simply means they won't care. Also, the impact depends on if customers are sustainable, if customers are conscious about sustainability. And the last point I was saying is, if all banks have similar CSR policies, so Wells Fargo is not different from Morgan's and the rest. So what you are doing, others are doing it. So that does not give you a competitive advantage. Competitive advantage will come if you have a unique selling point. There's competitive advantage if your product is different, if your activity is different from those of your competitors. But if you are doing the same as your competitors, you don't have competitive advantage. That is the point I'm making here. Does it make sense, please? So the overall success will depend on if stakeholders are influenced by ethical consideration or are more concerned or inclined with price and return on investment. So what does stakeholders really want? Is this ethical? Is this sustainability or lower prices or increased profit for them, increased dividends or increased salary? So it depends on what stakeholders are thinking about. Because it's all about stakeholders. Is Wells Fargo in line with the rest of the stakeholders? That is difficult. If you think about employees, it might affect shareholders. If you think about shareholders, it might affect the environment. If you think about the environment, it will not go well with government because you might not be able to pay more taxes.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be opportunity cost when it comes to decision making. I think the point is clear. Are you getting more points as I'm explaining now?
Yeah.
Because tomorrow is crucial. You need to give me A.
Yeah.
Please. 80 out of 80, if it's possible, get it. My student has been one of the best students in economics in the last 2 years. So you can also be the best student in business. Get it. Bring it here. We'll be proud.
Sure.
Now, the last one, question 3, it's about CPA. Are you there? Question 3. Yeah. They said, the question says, using critical path analysis calculation and the data in extract G and H, evaluate the benefit to Burger King of using CPA for its renovation program. CPA is a decision-making tool and planning tool that can provide Burger King and its franchisees with a useful overview of the renovation plan or project. CPA is a tool that helps to manage projects as it helps to identify the minimum length of time needed to complete a project. CPA helps to spot activities that have some slack, which allows a better allocation of resources. Oh, this one can take time. Let's channel resources into this because we need efficiency so that we can meet up with the time. Yes or no? And the CPA analysis is going to take 11 weeks to finish. Yes or no? By carrying out a CPA above, Burger King can see that renovating a restaurant will take 11 weeks. So please, when you work out the calculation, as soon as you're done with the calculation, write the calculation in form of a statement so that you can get the mark for the calculation and the mark for the statement. Do you get the point I'm making here? Look at what I did here. I work it out. By carrying out the above CPA, Burger King can see that renovating a restaurant will take 11 weeks. You work out, you get the mark for this, you get the mark for that. Knowing this allows Burger King to reduce the risk and cost of the redevelopment by encouraging careful assessment of the requirements for each activity. However, the CPA may not be effective for all restaurants as they may have different building requirements and different size.
Sure.
You can't tell me that all the franchisees will have the same building structure. So which simply means the resources needed for A might not be the same resources needed for B. But we're talking about the same analysis for different outlets.
Franchisees.
Yeah. So it might not be accurate. So the quality of the network is dependent on the accuracy of the data imputed. It depends on the data you use.
Yeah, the accuracy.
So the accuracy. So it depends on that. Please, when you're writing about CPA, don't forget about these points. The quality of the network is dependent on the accuracy of the data imputed.
I think I
You wrote that. So this may be the first time Burger King is renovating the restaurant, which means predicting the length of time to complete the project may be difficult. You said that too, I like that. For example, activity C may take longer than 2 weeks. Activity C is considered to be done within 2 weeks. What about if it's more than 2 weeks? If it is more than 2 weeks, it affects the 11th week. Do you understand? So, for example, activity C may take longer than 2 weeks to complete, and this will delay the project as it will take longer than 11 weeks to complete. Did you get that point? The success depends on the skills of the person carrying out the CPA. Not only the data now, the skills of the person carrying it out. The first point you made was about the data imputed. Now we're talking about the skills of the person constructing the CPA. So there are two different things, and you're going to get 2 different marks for that. Talk about the skills, talk about the data accuracy. Do you get it? So the success depends on the skills of the person constructing the CPA and the supply chain. Because you have to rely on those that are going to supply you raw materials. Sure. So if there is delay in supply chain, it affects the date it's going to be completed. Yes or no? CPA is a decision tool that must be used with other decision-making tools to be more effective. So that's about it. I think it's clear. So on that note, we're going to end. Today's the last video, the last exam practice, past paper session for paper 3, because the exam is tomorrow. So for those that are doing the exams, I wish them all the best of luck. And for my students too, I wish you guys the best students in business anyway. For the whole of Africa. So we'll end this.